It's almost like there's a religious fervor around vaccines that cannot be touched. Kennedy is very, very difficult because of some of the stances he's had throughout his life. 77 Nobel Laureates. They did come out against Robert F. Kennedy. And they're intelligent individuals. And so we look at that and we would like to lean our trust on them. But we also have to ask the question, why are we the sickest nation on earth? Why do we spend more in healthcare than any other nation? And why do we have higher rates of inflammatory conditions, diabetes, obesity? Why is that happening? And that question needs an answer, and we need to solve that problem.
You're Dr. Ron Dummar. I'm your patient. I'm Nick, and this is the Be Well Now podcast. And as a functional medicine doctor, we've done a podcast on this before where you say Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be really beneficial to our children's health. And obviously not everybody agrees with you.
Sure.
The Nobel laureates coming out against him in terms of his appointment for Secretary of Health and Human Services, it seems like the establishment is very against RFK.
Mm-hmm.
Trump wants him to be the head of Health and Human Services. So I guess I'm curious from where you stand, what's going on here? Folks are just kind of hearing about this and they've heard of RFK and they're like, who is this wacko? Your passion is health. You have a practice here in Heber City, Utah. Like, I trust you with the health of my kids, myself. This is your world, and whether people believe it or not, like, you're a great healer. And so I don't know. I'm just trying to reach the skeptic out there who's like, I don't think RFK is a good idea. I think he's representing the fringe. And what is your message to folks out there? Because I know you feel really strongly about this.
I've been a supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for many years. I've followed him for many years as a health professional and followed his career. And I have a very difficult time suggesting that someone who is trying to clean up toxins and chemicals from our food, from our environment, and from our medications, how is that controversial? To me, that seems like someone we should put up on a pedestal, someone we should put at the highest office of the land, someone that I've promoted and hoped would be chosen as a VP pick for any presidential candidate if he wasn't exactly himself the president. So for me, I'm looking at that saying, who doesn't want clean air, clean water, clean food, clean medications? That's not controversial.
So you're looking at these Nobel laureates, 77 of them signing a document saying they don't want him, to be the head of HHS. Very smart, educated people.
Intelligent, absolutely.
So you sort of trust that. I'm like, a Nobel, I mean, that...
Yeah, you want to place your trust in them.
They probably know a lot more about the subject than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But, trust in institutions has definitely ebbed. And I wonder, anyway, there's still power in that name, Nobel. So I would just defer to them.
As a physician, I'm a natural health physician, and I encourage my patients to know and to study and to learn. And I don't expect them to just trust me. I want them to learn a little bit about it as well. Why am I prescribing this for you? What are the potential actions? What are the potential side effects? I think all of those things are important questions to ask. You don't want to just go in and say, okay, whatever. Well, whatever he gives me, that's fine. That's actually, for me, that's blind. That's blindness. And I don't want to be in a world where I'm blind. I want to be in a world where I have my eyes open. And if there's a risk that I'm expected to take, I need to be able to know about that risk, right? So show me what that risk is. If there's a risk to consuming certain chemicals in my food and they're being placed in my food regularly and I'm not told about that risk, I have a problem with that. I have a real big problem with that. And I want that exposed. I want to be able to say, hey, here's a risk and I'm willing to take it. That's fine. I don't have a problem with anybody putting a chemical in their food product. I just want to know what it is. And I want to know what the potential side effects are for me if I consume that food.
And your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know RFK's been a big proponent of helping kids not have a lot of processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong? I actually want you to explain this more because you're a big RFK fan. I know he's big on, clean water and
fluoride out of water.
Yep.
So he wants fluoride out of water is one of the big things. Plastics, there's a lot of plastics, petrochemicals, and all sorts of things in our environment, the things that we use now. We have plastics, I would say, residues in most, if not all, of our processed food. So if you get a packaged food product, you have some sort of plastic residue in that. So when you consume that, now this buildup of plastics, they build up over time. And sometimes these plastics and these chemicals are referred to as forever chemicals because they are very difficult to excrete from the body. They never leave the body. And they actually increase, we know that they can increase the incidence of tumors, cancers, inflammatory disorders, neurodegenerative disorders. And fluoride, going back to fluoride with water, that's one of his really big emphasis, is we know it's a neurotoxin, right? We know that fluoride's a neurotoxin. We know that studies have actually linked it to reducing the IQ of children, okay? And we also know that it impacts thyroid health and increases the incidence of certain types of cancers. So why would I not want to at least ask the question, is it a good idea for me to put this in my drinking water? How do I know what the dose is? How do I know what dose I'm getting of this fluoride if it's in my drinking water and then it's in my toothpaste and then it's at the dental office? All of a sudden I get all of these different exposures to fluoride. How do I know I'm not getting fluorosis? There was a study done that showed that something like 60% of toddlers in the US actually had fluorosis, had too much fluoride in their system. We're getting too much fluoride. In fact, Europe hasn't used fluoride. They haven't used fluoride at all for maybe 30 plus years in their water.
Well, the fact that we have it in so much, it's really, you have to actively seek out toothpaste that doesn't have fluoride in it.
Absolutely.
I was even looking at the Tom's of Maine brand, which you can find at like Walgreens. And they had one that had fluoride and one that didn't. They're even playing the fluoride game because they realize that's what people are looking for. So if you're getting it in your toothpaste, do you really need it in your water? I saw the tweet from RFK before the election that said, come February or January or whatever, I'm going to recommend that, we take out fluoride from the water system. Yeah. So that's a big priority for him.
Well, and it is topical. The way that it works, it's meant to be topical. So ingesting doesn't really do anything for you, and it actually decreases bone density. Really? So if we have, what is the number one problem with seniors? What is it? The number one problem we have, osteopenia, which is decreased bone density, and they end up breaking a hip. They fall. Number one problem that they experience that leads to fatalities, essentially, is a fracture. And usually it's like a hip fracture. They try to step up the curb, and they miss the curb just slightly. Their foot trips over it, and then they fall, and they break a hip. Well, that's a decreased bone density. Is it possible that that's coming as a result of too much fluoride? It's possible.
So is this your biggest concern or of all the causes that RFK represents, is fluoride the big one?
You can go to, I think it's Fluoride Action Network, and you can see a host of studies, research that's been done. If you want to go learn more about fluoride and fluoride in our water, whether we should be including fluoride or how you can even be an advocate for clean water and safety as it comes to the use of fluoride, I think it's called fluorideactionnetwork.org. You can go visit their website. But I think it's just really telling that between Europe and the United States, there was a study done that showed that our dental caries, our cavities, are about the same. Like the incidence rate of cavities is about the same. And yet we fluoridate our water and they do not. So
I got the look of kind of skepticism from the dentist a couple of times when I said no fluoride after my kids' dental visits, but they've been cavity free the last couple of visits. We just tell them to brush and floss at night and sometimes in the morning. I'm not saying I have the best example of anything. I'm just saying, like, it's crazy. You turn down the fluoride, you feel weird at the dentist, which is an upcharge. So they're obviously making money off of selling this. It's an upsell. It's sales. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're bad people, but you can return and not get cavities without getting the fluoride, and it's like, wow, that's so interesting. Anyway,
so a couple of the other things that have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has really been focused on is, well, I would say an overarching aspect of it is concern about corporate influence on public health. So what I mean by that is, you and I off the air, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and that is that kind of our political progress. And when I personally became more independent as opposed to a Republican or a Democrat, I became more independent in my thought process. And that was because I saw from George W. Bush's cabinet, the people that he had appointed that were doing certain things would then get a high-paying multi-million-dollar job for a pharmaceutical company or other said company that was benefiting from certain decisions that were being made in public policy, and then they were being paid to go back to Washington and lobby, right? So I saw that kind of revolving door of, yeah, go make money in Washington, then come get a job for us, go back to Washington. Yeah. And I did not like that. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaks out in a significant way against that. And in fact, he has actually stated that he's going to be putting policies in place to prevent that from happening. In fact, they've called it potentially even like a 7-year cool-off period, meaning if you're involved in the political network of some sort, you cannot get a job for somebody who's lobbying to politicians for at least 7 years. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty good idea. I think it makes sense to me that we shouldn't have people who are benefiting and profiting from a specific thing to go lobby that who've also been in politics and government.
I think the big one here that, the elephant in the room is his stance on vaccines, because the medical establishment says it is totally conspiratorial and that it is very fringe, and he represents a danger to our kids' health that could set us back, for generations. Yeah.
So, and you're 100% right in the perception of that. And that is the perception that is pushed out there. And oftentimes he's accused of spreading disinformation, right? And what I will tell you is hang on here for just a second, because this is what Robert F. Kennedy suggests. He suggests that we as a whole need to embrace the idea that it's okay to have proper safety studies performed, long-term safety studies, in fact, for our medications that we're giving to nearly every person in our country. So if we want to mandate something, I mean, think about a medication, a medical device, a medical surgery, anything that we want to actually mandate, to require kids to have in order to go to a public school, in order to be involved in public, in public interactions, to mandate that. Don't you think that it makes sense for us to have, that should be the most researched. If we're mandating something, we should have more research on that than anything else, so that we can lay it out and say, look, here's the long-term safety studies. We know for certain that over the long term, those people that have been vaccinated versus those that have not do better and fare better. The problem is that there are certain studies that have been done like that, and every time that they have been done, they've come out to show and demonstrate something that is not desired by the establishment. And so they...
What do you mean by that?
I'm being fairly cryptic in that. It may be intentionally, but essentially what it does is it shows that those who are not vaccinated are always healthier than those that are. That's what all of those studies have shown. And so as a result, they have also been ostracized. They've been pushed. The papers have been given pressure to be pulled down and withdrawn. And so there's been a lot of pressure placed on those research studies to be withdrawn or to be discredited. And so they all have. But you can go back, Andrew Wakefield, here's a name, Andrew Wakefield. If you want to do research, you want to look at some of the studies that he did. He ran a clinic for many years, and he did actually, I think it was a 15 to a 20-year study with mothers and moms, and followed their infants and their toddlers into adulthood. And they saw that overall, those patients that he had, and this is hundreds of patients, right? If not It was hundreds of patients. And over time, what he found in his studies through his clinic was that those patients that he had who chose not to get vaccinated, and even those who chose to have a extended or a reduced vaccine introduction load over time, did far better than those who followed the particular standard or the schedule.
Why is everybody so opposed?
It's not controversial, Nick. It doesn't need to be. The only reason it's what we're saying is, let me say this again another way. The issue is not necessarily with vaccines as a whole. It's the safety testing around vaccines. So here's another name. I'm giving you guys all sorts of names. If you want to get into this, if you want to really research it, if you want to know, if you want to be in the know, right, then you should probably learn a little bit about some of the cases that have been brought before Congress, about some of the information that pharmaceutical companies are trying to keep from people. You should probably know as well why certain pharmaceutical companies were trying to withhold data and information from the public for 75 years following COVID. Why would they want nothing about this to get out for 75 years?
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that they wanted information about what was going on, were there safety trials, so Aaron Siri, here's the name, Aaron Siri, he's an attorney. He is the lead attorney right now with regards to vaccines and vaccine health, I would say vaccine safety. So what he's doing is he's requesting, we would like to see all of the vaccine safety trials that have been done for these medications, for these vaccines. And you just need to look at the videos, listen to what he is saying, listen to some of the cases that he's presenting and the questions that he's going through. And he literally puts the father of vaccines. His name is Stanley Plotkin. Stanley Plotkin has written the book on vaccines. The key lead immunologist, the father of vaccines, he puts him on the stand and he questions him. And Stanley Plotkin admits that there have not been appropriate safety studies done that will demonstrate whether or not significant neurological effects come from vaccinations. We don't know. So the real answer is we don't know. And that's why mothers are so upset. That's why people are so upset. That's why Robert F. Kennedy is wanting to basically be an advocate for these people throughout the country who are suggesting and saying that they are observing that after a certain vaccine or a vaccination, their child changed. Something changed neurologically. That's all they're saying. And no one's calling into question, well, I don't know. I don't think it was this. We don't know what it was. And that's what Robert F. Kennedy is saying. We don't know. And we don't know because we have zero safety studies to really prove it. And if you look at, for instance, the hepatitis B vaccine, did a safety trial. They had about 400 patients that they did the safety study with, and they followed the child. How many days would you expect? If we want to know, does this vaccine cause problems in patients, how many days should we do? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? Remember when we talked about homeoprophylaxis, the natural...
I'll bet our audience doesn't.
Yeah, well, you guys should go look at it.
Okay.
Homeoprophylaxis is an option that you can do to actually train your immune system. And when we looked at homeoprophylaxis, we talked about research studies that had been done, long-term studies, 10 plus years, right? 10 plus years to follow the health of those children based on the decisions that they had made. Here's the problem, and this is the argument that a lot of the scientists give. They say, well, by that time, people who have vaccinated, right, the likelihood is they've also made a lot of other difficult decisions or maybe problematic decisions for their health that would affect it negatively. So we can't equate it at that time anyway to whether or not it was the vaccine. And that's a fair point. But I don't know that it's a point that suggests that we shouldn't do the research, that we shouldn't compare those that are vaccinated to those that are not. What we should be doing is saying...
How long was their study?
How long was it? How long did they follow the kids? 5 days. 5 days. So you can go look at there's a great interview that he does, Aaron Siri with Stanley Plotkin, and he literally asks him, he says, is 5 days of observation of a child long enough to determine whether or not a vaccine would cause autism or a vaccine would cause neurological issues or lung issues or inflammatory conditions or diabetes, right? And he goes through and he asks him all these questions. And you can see Stanley Plotkin's responses to all of those. He consecutively goes through a variety of different individuals whose literal role has been to oversee the safety of vaccines and vaccine trials. And he's essentially trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. All right. So that's all we're doing. That's all we're wanting. That's all Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is suggesting, is that we should have proper safety trials. Is that controversial to have proper safety trials? To actually make sure something works? You know, if some product gets onto the shelf, is it controversial for us to say, hey, before I try that product, I want to know it works. I want to see some sort of evidence that what you're claiming about it is actually true.
So is he a blessing or a curse for our nation's health?
Well, when you speak, I learned a phrase a long time ago, when you speak the truth, you divide the people. And RFK is a controversial figure because, in my opinion, he's speaking truth. He's speaking truth, and what he's doing is defending people and standing up for people like he's done his entire career that have not had the opportunity or the power or the money, the resources to stand up for themselves. And I think it's a great thing. So I think my money, my hopes are with Robert F. Kennedy. I will give you one more thing. If you want to look into this a little bit more as well, maybe a little more on the idea of corporate influence on public policy or public health.
Okay.
Watch the film Dark Waters. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Dark Waters. That's a good film. You should watch it.
Maybe I will.
You should. Dark Waters. Go watch the film Dark Waters. It's about an attorney. You'll see an attorney and you'll see his journey through realizing some toxic stuff that has been added to a lot of products that we use every day that has potential for leaching into our bodies. Cookware being one of them.
Yeah.
So go watch it. Dark Waters.
Whew. There's a lot to worry about out there.
Yeah, well, the idea is, again, we're here to advocate for health. We're here to advocate. I've been, you could say, a warrior fighting this fight for 20 plus years, right? I've been in this mentality, and you can get way into the weeds. You can get so upset. You can get so angry. And I've been in a place at times where I'm like, what is happening to the world? What is going on with people? How could people be blind? How could they be blinded to the fact that they literally are consuming poisons every day in their food? Like, how could people be blind to that? But we choose to because of convenience sometimes, because of, it's so close, it's so easy, right? And because we'd rather not. Some people, the phrase is even there, ignorance is bliss. Some people literally choose not to know. I happen to choose, I wanted to know. I wanted to be able to make certain decisions in my health and the food that I choose to eat, the food that I feed my kids, so that they could have the best opportunity at life without neurotoxins affecting their brain, preventing them from being able to concentrate and focus and needing to be on a variety of different medications just to ramp up those areas of their physiology that were being depressed by neurotoxins and chemicals. All you have to do is be in the know, to choose to be in the know, and to make decisions and choices that are going to benefit and promote health in your body. And that's what we do every day in our office. As a functional medicine doctor, that's what I do every day, is consult with people and help them to know what the nutrients are, what the vitamins, minerals are, what the foods are that they should be selecting, what the foods are that they should be avoiding for their best optimal health.
Whether he becomes, I guess, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, fluoride, overexposure to plastics, vaccine safety, these issues aren't going away. So we can all take action in our own lives to try to,
we have to advocate.
Control what we can.
Yeah, we have to advocate for a better, more transparent research, right? We have to all advocate for that. Even in our lives, we have to advocate for more transparency and for better health in all the products. And one way that we do that is by purchasing products that are advocating or espousing a higher level of health, right? Now, there's a whole swath across the board. There's a spectrum, right? And so when you get into that as well, you realize even just because you're at a health food store doesn't mean that every product is going to be the greatest for you, right? But you are making a step in the right direction. And it's those little steps that are going to be a blessing to your body, to your physiology, to your mind, to your spiritual health, to your mental health, and to your physical health moving forward. And that's what we want for you.
So what's going to happen? I don't know how this is going to age, but if you get it wrong, but you think he's going to get confirmed?
I honestly don't know. I'm hopeful, and I think he will. As I don't know. Like we went through this whole thing. How do you say that advocating, how do you say that advocating for proper safety trials and advocating for a healthy environment, healthy food, and healthy water is controversial? How is that controversial? That's who he is. What is controversial is that those individuals that have allowed status quo to be where the nation itself has become the sickest in the world, that's the status quo. That's what he wants to change ultimately. Not only that, but that's what he's expected to change. And I would argue that that's what we as a people, as a population, expect to change as well.
Another episode of Be Well Now in the books.
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Join us again next time.
Subscribe to the channel if you can.
You got it.
You know what to do.
Yep. Click
Thanks,
that
everybody.
link right there.